It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And this Wellness Wednesday, we're talking about, keeping in mind that everybody's going through something. And this video is probably going to upset some people. And it's not intended to upset people. It's intended to be helpful and have something to keep in mind that you can absorb in an outlet like this that is minimally embarrassing, right? Because somebody right in front of you is not telling you something that you need to respond to. You can watch this video, react, and then, collect yourself and make the changes you feel like you need to make, or don't. It's very strange to me when people are like, well, what if I don't want this? Well, then don't bloody do it. That's self-explanatory. You have choices. And I don't know why some people just assume that everybody but them has their shit totally together and they're the only one flailing and people are being so mean to them because they don't put up with their shit. But they do. And real talk, that's using people like tools. And that's the part I'm saying is going to upset some people. But hear me out. Because, people are people are not tools. And if you treat them like tools, unintentionally or not, they're not going to want to be around you. Makes sense, right? All right, let's get into it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. People, everybody's got something. Everybody's got something. Right now, I am bloody exhausted. And my eyes have gone. I'm having trouble seeing, but I have to keep going because pushing through and being exhausted is better than canceling stuff. And, I'm just in a place financially where I'm not really scrambling regularly, and I'd like to stay there. But of course, with tariffs, things are more and more and more expensive, so I can't exactly relax there. And I know I'm not the only one, right? Like, I just assume people have stuff going on. And so I conduct myself of this thing, I need you to stop doing that, please, if we're going to continue to have a conversation or continue to work together or continue to be friends, right? If you don't want to stop doing it, that's fine, but it's untenable for me. I'm letting you know so that you can make the change. No blindsiding. And it's amazing to me how many people think that's a gotcha, right? Because to me, that is the simplest thing in the world. Somebody tells you something's bothering them. You don't want to bother them. You stop doing it. If you do want to bother them, you keep doing it, letting them know that, being aware that they may want to cut off contact. And there's this thing that's come up, and part of it is just, internet trolls creating permission structures to just being raging jackasses. And this frustrated me so badly because Twitch sent tax documentation forms to me. And I had, I went out of my, is this legit? Is this something that happens? And it's like, all right, I spent a lot of time going, is this accurate? And so I now have to fill out the tax forms because I spent the time that I thought I'd be filling out the tax forms, researching whether the tax forms were correct because, you're clicking on a link and inputting your personal information regarding taxes. You want to get that right? You don't want to click a malicious link there. But we live in such a pro-fuckwad society that instead of the internet companies taking responsibility for people's online circumstances being safe, they go, well, we can't control what people send. It's not us. And so everybody has to be kind of appropriately paranoid about what they send. And it's made it impossible to really assess whether a threat is credible. And that's left a lot of people very on edge and jumping at false positives. And especially with AI now, that anybody can copy anyone's writing style. It's just, okay, we live in a very, very weird world where trust between people is deliberately being eroded by bad actors. And that's a sticky thing to get out of, right? Because, yeah, nobody wants to be fooled. Certainly nobody wants to be catfished or defrauded. But at some point, we do have to sort of just relinquish some control, because trying to control everything means we end up with absolutely no control. We're just in a spin cycle of rejection and blaming everyone else for outcomes. It's kind of fruitless because nobody's forced to talk to you. And that's something I know isn't universal, right? I recognize I'm late Gen X. And in Gen X, you know, the generation that everybody forgets about, if you didn't like somebody, first of all, you were allowed to not like somebody. You could not like somebody without proving that they're evil incarnate. It's just not my cuppa. They rub me the wrong way. I'm sure they're a good person, but they're not like us. Okay. And so you'd stay in your side of the area, and the other person would stay in the other side of the area. And it was basically, I don't want to see either of you near each other, right? You've got your space, they've got their space. And if I see one of you in the other one's space, well, there's going to be a problem. And that taught boundaries. That taught that this space was mine and that space was theirs. And as long as I stayed here, that person, there would be consequences to them bothering me. Great. I didn't terribly care that I lost access to the other corner because that person deserved to take up space just as much as I did. This is the recipe for balanced adulting. But the millennials didn't get that. And it seems like Gen Z has a different kind of bullshit. Gen Z apparently is hypercritical parenting, that they are just so barraged by criticism that they just assume it. They assume it's coming, or they assume that a neutral or just awkwardly worded thing is criticism, instead of it just being like, no, it just came out the wrong way. Or somebody said something not intending for it to be criticism. It was just a statement. It was just an observation. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. But millennials had this bullshit, we're all on the same team crap. And it's led to, I think, real distrust of this belief that everybody else seems to have it figured out, except the person making that assumption. And maybe because Gen X was also known as sort of the slacker generation, our delicious defensive apathy, we were like, no, nobody here has it figured out. We're all just fucked. You know, everybody's fucked. We all, except we don't know what the fuck we are doing. We are stumbling through. The thing is, we didn't have to have it figured out, right? It was fine to sort of not know and stumble through and find our people and find our place. Millennials need it planned by the time they're 14. And Gen Z, I think that's where the hypercritical stuff came from. And I wonder if because I mean, Gen X are the parents of Gen Z. And I think maybe being the latchkey kid generation, the parents were overly involved. And that over-involvement landed on their kids like criticism. I don't know. But it's important to understand the different framings of different generations because it makes you less narrow-minded about your assumptions about other people. When you recognize that even, okay, there's 3 massive buckets of people that sounds like Odo from Deep Space Nine, right? Like buckets of people. But you've got these 3 main buckets of people, and then there's different cultural raisings and different religious backgrounds and just different experiences. And the more you learn about that, the more you realize that nobody has it absolutely all figured out. And are there people just plotting shit for nefarious purposes? Yeah, sure. But here's the thing. If you respect that access to you is a privilege, then it doesn't really matter what somebody else's nefarious intent is. You can spend your entire time being paranoid, or you can say what you mean and mean what you say and, just go, yeah, not my best day. And this standard of perfection that people are putting on themselves, knowing they can't meet it, feeling victimized, and then pointing out all the flaws in other people, it's just such a waste of fucking time. Like, no one's perfect. And, I've had this kind of weird, stark realization that I get nasty grams from people every so often, and they tend to use the not therapy show email. And whenever I get one of those, I can't tell if it's really from the person it claims to be or somebody using AI to impersonate this person who I know does not like me and I know has an active grudge against me. But, they put so much content, so much examples of how they write online that it would just be very easy to plunk that stuff into an AI and mimic them, impersonate them. And so it's like, is it important one way or the other, whether this is this person or not? No. So, and the only real way to deal with that sort of troll is to just make it a complete waste of their time. But what kind of, it is a waste of time being actively awful to other people. And what I find is people don't tend to go, well, I just feel like kicking a puppy, so I'm going to be mean to this person who obviously has some instability and, I'm just poking them to watch them squeal. Nobody's that self-aware. At least they don't, very rarely do people be that honest. Instead, they start trying to find some permission structure that's of the form of fighting back. It's some sort of petty slight that has turned to this damn blood feud. And it's like, no, there is no good reason for this. The truth is, people are mean because they can be. Because they think it's a better alternative than whatever screaming is going on inside their own skull. And that's just not a place I want to inhabit. So whenever someone starts getting conspiratorial in, especially when they're saying something about, say, a friend of mine or a colleague that I know is not that person. Like sometimes somebody will say something about somebody. It's like, yes, that's characteristic. Okay, fair. They do that. But other times it's like, nope, I know that this assumed motivation is not the person in question. So, that argument's not going to get very far with me because it's not persuasive. And people consider that mean, right? But it's not. It's not. I think mean would be going, you're so right, when you actually don't agree with the person. And it's funny because I experimented with that with somebody who was clearly looking for agreement at all costs. And so I did you're so right. And they immediately started apologizing about coming on too strongly. And it's like, holy shit. So you were aware that you were coming on really strong. And now you're sorry because you got what you wanted. Well, that's never going to happen again, right? Because I desperately need authenticity from people. And I really need people who are not trying to control the reactions of others around me. Because again, when you try to have too much control, you end up with very little or a feeling like you have no control. Because the amount of control you need to feel safe and comfortable is just not realistic. So, if you need this much control and you get this much control, well, you feel pretty stable, right? But if you need this much control, if you need this much control and you get this much control, the same amount of control, well, you're going to feel unstable. It's the same amount of input. It's the expectation or need going in. And too many people need too much control nowadays. And I do suspect that it is that hypercritical, you're all on the same team, forced forgiveness, just pushing for social performative cohesion instead of authentic, sincere conversations. And obviously that's a problem. And obviously it's no one's fault who was raised in that paradigm. And it takes a little while to do a combination of social pruning, meaning, the people who are just not either they're not capable or they're not willing to meet you, where your boundaries are. I'd say meet me halfway, but normally from where I'm at, I'm willing to give a person 90% of what they're asking from me. I need 10% from them. And it's either all or nothing. And so I'm like, well, no, I'm not prepared to do that. And then they get rip-roaring pissed. And it's not taking anything from them, but the conversation. I find it so interesting that I will go, look, I need a break from this. I need this to cool down. And they will rush somewhere and blow it up further. I was like, all right, you made your choice. In a way, it's very simple when someone does that. If you ask for something as simple as a break and don't get it, that tells you a lot about where the other person's at. And again, not bad people. Just they need way too much control to be healthy. I feel quite bad for them, but they can't be my problem because I've got too much else going on. And, I was talking to somebody the other day who tried to help somebody out, and there was just no helping that person. That person needed professional help. And they felt like they let them down. And I said, no, they're in the system now and they're where they need to be. And I said, at some point, help becomes enabling. If someone is chronically stepping on the same damn rake and you go over there, try that again, guiding them back to the rake, you're not helping, the nose heel from the brake for the last 3 times they stepped on it. And that doesn't mean you have the right to tell other people how to live their lives. And that doesn't mean you can set the path of somebody else's life. It means, I say, and it's not therapy, let them be the hero of their own story and you be the hero of your own story and not anybody else's. And it's worrisome to me that so many people have such poorly formed self-concept and such low self-esteem that they can't cast themselves as the protagonist in their own story because they've so self-invalidated. And here's the problem when you self-invalidate. When you are telling yourself all these negative things, you are assuming that everybody else around you is thinking those negative things about you, and you fill in blanks for other people that they are not saying, they are not even thinking. And then they're completely confused at your reaction because you added something that they didn't say. One is, they hate me. Most of the time, it doesn't make any sense. Right? They probably don't hate you. They probably don't think that much about you. Do you hate them? And you're just projecting it because, hating people is bad. I don't know. But it's either that they add shit to the communication or they take away statements of intent from communication. And this is not everybody. I actually had a really good experience yesterday with a conversation that I felt was going off the rails. And I just sort of owned it and, went, it seems like I'm annoying you here. And what I really am is deeply concerned about you. And it did turn the conversation around, just stating that intent. And, I give that person credit for actually hearing what I said there. So many people don't. So many people don't. So many people, when they hear, I'm concerned about you, they immediately panic, feel embarrassed or something, and then try to nuke the entire thing from orbit because they equate concern with weakness or being a burden. And that's a shitty place to be, and I recognize that I was there at some point. And one of the things that I have to get, very clear in my own work is that people who don't accept the communication that I present, they add and take away. They may be perfectly fine people, but they are not good for me. And the big thing about that is telling me what my intentions were. Because that was something that tripped me up for a really long time. I was so stuck in, not trusting my gut that if somebody told me, oh no, you did that not for the reason you think, but for this other reason, I was like, did I? Am I completely unaware of why I do things? And I realized, no, I'm pretty self-aware. I may miss things, like there may be missing pieces, but I generally know why I'm doing things. But it's amazing how many people aren't, because they cannot be honest with themselves. Because instead of just going, I'm angry at this person, and just being, this is what it is. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. Being angry is bad, and bad people get angry at people. And so I can't be angry. They must be angry at me, right? It's just the deflection and projection. And it leads to utterly nonsensical stuff. And people can be doing utterly ridiculous shit and think it makes sense. And it doesn't, other than there is a lot of emotion there. And it's tough because the last thing you say to a person who is emotional and is not comfortable being emotional is pointing out that they're being emotional. And so some of those are really tough, especially some of the really fraught conversations about men's issues lately. And I almost chucked Manly Mondays completely this week. And the reason was so stupid. I'll talk about it on Feedback Friday. But it was, fuck it, this is too hard. Because, you know, sometimes considering men's feelings means don't call them out on their feelings before they're ready. And it's hard when you do that and you're just trying to give the guy an off-ramp to out of bad behavior because he's in pain and not handling it well. And he won't take it. He just wants to beat on the nearest thing, which happens to be me at that moment, right? And it's like, okay, I know I gave him the chance. And I know from numerous men that I've talked to, that's what people want someone to do. And I can't let that one person who didn't react well dissuade me from doing it again. It's hard, man. But, you know, just because he didn't take it well doesn't mean I don't see the logic in it and doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. Just the right thing can be so hard sometimes. And that's why it's got to be about, I'm responsible for me, they're responsible for them, and that's it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? Just whatever they did, I have choices. Whatever I did, they have choices. And the behavior someone was responding to can shape the choice, right? It can provide context to the choice, but it doesn't rob people of choice nearly as much as people believe it does. They are acting out old traumas from when they were a kid and really were helpless. And you don't have to, you know. I find one of the best ways to avoid doing that is just, it was sort of owning my power or at least my influence in certain circumstances. I know that having this channel and having this community means I have to eat shit and take things on the chin sometimes because people see me as an authority. They see me in a position of power. And obviously that goes further on a Discord where people have to join than it does, you know, any asshole can comment on YouTube. But it's important to keep that in mind and use it when it's appropriate. Like, no, set an example of we don't do that here. But then also recognize, like, look, I can beat this guy down and shred his terrible logic. Or I can recognize that there's something deeply painful here and just kind of treat him like a person, knowing that he's not going to see it or appreciate it because he's so deep in pain. But you know what? It was something I would have wanted people to do for me when I was deep in trauma and I didn't get. And it would have helped me start recovery faster if I got a little bit of that kindness. Because I do believe that deep down, people recognize that they probably weren't totally present in those moments. People who are more secure in themselves can own that. People who aren't can't. But that's the part of it I can't control. I can't control how secure the other person is, right? I can only offer them respect, you know, offer them a ladder so they can climb out. I can't haul them out against their will. I can just remind myself that everybody's going through something. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone music but can't afford it, or sign up for one yourself if you feel like you need to work through some of this stuff. If you want that respect, coffee.com/Leanna K. Link in the description box below for the Leanna Care session. Please don't pay for your own Leanna Care sessions through Coffee. I will bill you. Thanks for watching, and be well.